honestly, like when I made the changes, golf was not even a consideration. Like I do this for me. I do this for my family. If my career continued, incredible. Like that's a huge blessing. Kind of feel like you almost got a second chance. But at the end of the day, like I said earlier, this is it. Like I got to take care of this before I can worry about any of that other stuff.
Hello, and welcome to Pursuing Health. I'm Dr. Julie Fouché, family physician and former CrossFit Games athlete. Here, I bring you information and inspiration to help bridge the gap between fitness and medicine and support your journey toward your healthiest self. In this episode, I sit down with three-time PGA Tour winner Scott Stallings. Scott's story was especially interesting to me because even though he's played as a professional golfer since 2010, he struggled with sleep, excess weight, and lack of energy, which were all compounded by his grueling travel schedule. When he saw a physician and discovered some lab abnormalities, he eventually hit his breaking point. He decided enough was enough, and he started making some huge lifestyle changes. From correcting a sinus problem that was causing sleep apnea, to cleaning up his diet and incorporating CrossFit into his training regimen, over time, Scott developed strategies to stay on track even though his career has him on the road more days than he is home. He's now lost over 40 pounds, and his health is better than ever. I really enjoyed getting to know Scott and learning about how he was able to make such big lifestyle changes, as well as the impact they've had on his personal health and happiness, but also on his loved ones. Before we dive into this episode, I do want to make it clear that this podcast is for general information only and does not provide medical advice. I recommend that you seek assistance from your personal physician for any health conditions or concerns. And with that, let's get started with the episode. Welcome to Pursuing Health. I'm very excited to be here with Scott Stallings, who has a very interesting health story to go along with his personal and professional career. And so thank you for coming on and being willing to share your story.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And I look forward to seeing it, especially from the perspective of what you guys and what you've dealt with in your own, competition and now what you're doing in your career and, kind of bridging the gap between what you do and what I do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I thought we could just start with sort of your story of how you got into golf and how that became such a big part of your life. I know I grew up in Michigan and my dad was a big golfer. And so I played some golf growing up, but was never that good at it. And I don't think we might have had a golf team at my high school, but I was not good enough to even join the golf team at high school. So I'm always curious, what was the hook that really got you into it? And then how did it become something that was a focus in your life?
I played like every sport, like every kid, it was kind of seasonal. Baseball, basketball, and soccer was kind of the three sports that I focused on, I guess, if that's a thing. I know now it's all the specialization. Like you're like fully committed to, 20 hours a week at like 7 years old. It's like, goodness gracious. But golf was something that I always did. A bunch of people in my family played. My dad played, but it was never anything like something that was always there. It was never really, it was kind of what you did in the interim, in between the seasons and stuff. And I started to progress. And then Tiger Woods came and changed everything. And, you kind of saw a young kid doing something different that really never been done before in the world of golf. And people started paying attention and I was one of them as well. And I remember we were on a baseball team. We were getting ready to kind of start the season, get up and going. And the Masters is in April. And Tiger won his first Masters in 1997. And just remember, like, I want to do that. Like, I want to do what that guy did. And like, I, kind of cut the cord on everything else and focused on golf. And at that moment, golf was by far the sport that I was the worst at.
Okay.
Like it wasn't even close. Like I'd had like a little bit of like dabbling of, some success here and there, but nothing to the point of some of the other sports that I was playing. But just kind of fell in love with it from there and was able to pursue a career. I played golf at Tennessee Tech, then graduated, kind of banged around like mini tours, kind of developmental tours for about a year and a half or so. And then I got my PGA Tour card in December of 2010.
Wow. And so how old were you when you saw that tournament and said, that's what I want to do?
13.
13. Okay. So you were
12, 13, somewhere right in there.
Okay. So pretty young, but it's always so interesting to me. Like, what are those moments that really captivate someone and set in motion that goal or that dream that then changes everything that you do? Like you said, you could have continued to pursue these other sports, but there was something about that moment or seeing what Tiger was capable of that stuck with you that said, this is what I want to do, and put all of your effort towards it.
Yeah, I just remember watching and seeing this kid that, people knew about, but not like, you always kind of know about that up and comer. And then the moment happens, we're like, oh, he is what we thought he was.
Mm-hmm.
And then like everyone has that moment of like, oh no, like it's over.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like the fact of all throughout the tournament, it just the whole, everything that surrounds the Masters and the mystique of a young, minority kid from California that's doing things that no one has ever seen. And it just gets into a point of where you see these guys that are kind of just, they were the gravy train was rolling. Mm-hmm. These guys, not much had really changed in the world of golf, and everything. And then it just almost overnight, it'll never be the same again. And I'm just sitting back, I'm watching with my dad. It's like, let's go do what that guy's doing.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And it was incredible. And I've been fortunate enough to, not a lot of guys get to pursue a professional career and have a chance to go compete and play against the guy that inspired them to want to do what they do for a living. Mm-hmm. So it has been incredible. Obviously, Tiger's had influence over a lot of different people in a lot of different ways, but the way that he kind of, to be able to go out there and play against him the last few years on tour it's been pretty great.
That's really incredible. So you really put all of your effort into golf and have a lot of success, obviously being able to play in college. And interesting, I think a lot of people listening to the podcast have heard Tennessee Tech before because of Rich Froning and now Haley Adams going there, and just that it's in Cookeville.
Yeah, it's a weird, like everyone know, like, but Rich and I didn't know each other till after college.
Were you there at the same time?
Yeah, he's a year younger than me, but we had a bunch of mutual acquaintances, but everyone just assumed like, oh, you guys are like college buddies. Like, no, like we knew each other like after the fact and everything. His first CrossFit Games win was the same weekend that I won my first tournament on tour. So it's just all cool. This like super coincidental things. And and now that kind of transitioning to that part, especially utilizing that relationship, when I was kind of starting to make some changes and starting to see some things that may or may not have put me in the right path, like he was one of the first people I reached out to. Mm-hmm. And like, all right, you're literally the fittest person in the world, what do I do? Like, I have no idea.
Not a bad person to ask for advice.
Correct.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay. So can you talk about then those early years of just playing golf professionally and what your health habits were like and how you at what point you started to realize that you were having some health issues?
Oh, I think a lot. I mean, ignorance is not an excuse, but ultimately, I mean, that's what it was. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that you see a lot of it, kind of the head in the dirt. I don't want to know. Doctors are only going to tell me things that are wrong with me. And instead of like, you see like little glimpses and find out, well, if we find out this is like happening, we can also find the kind of the treatment plan. And, not everything is like complete life overhaul, like little kind of tweaks and little bit of things. And that's what I was fearful. I'm going to do what I want when I want, as long as I play good and, I can kind of get away with whatever. And unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. But the world of golf is unique in the fact that, especially now with the way that the tour is, there's no real off season. I'm on the road 250 probably plus days a year. And my rookie year, I slept in my bed my own bed 37 nights.
Wow.
So
you're on the road.
You're on the road
year.
a lot. Yeah. So, I mean, you're basically learning to build habits and routines in a constantly changing environment. So if you have no plan and you have no like baseline as far as what you're trying to do on a day-to-day basis, as far as how you're going to recover and how you're going to train and how you're going to practice and how you're going to eat and all these things. And it's just sort of just like throw caution to the wind and just make it up as you go. I mean, you're completely screwed before you even start.
Right.
And honestly, that's what I was. There wasn't any conscious awareness of any kind of health. I did kind of what I felt like was best efforts. I think it's been a well documented. I had a pretty strong obsession with Dr. Pepper for a long time. I mean, to the point where I'd wake up with it, I'd go to bed with it. I would, just
all day
it was
long.
it was part of what I did. And, then it started, transitioning and, but golf was going well. I was progressing. I was seeing things change. I now, got my PGA Tour card and had success early. I won twice in, just under a year, and just kind of right out of the gate. And it was just like, man, this is great. And just slowly but surely kind of started to like, the kind of the volume of the travel and the playing and the practice. And I had made some strides as far as like how to train and, sort of started kind of building a little bit of a baseline as far as, man, I probably should do a little better job of taking care of myself, especially in golf. There's so much asymmetry and the repetitive movement. There's just not enough time to undo that. So you have to figure out a way to kind of be resilient and understand like how to just kind of deal with things that are going to go wrong. And 2013, my wife and I, that's when my son was born. And just the realization of like, man, I'm probably not to where I should be to be the husband, the father, the professional golfer. Like at some point I'm going to suck at all of these if I don't start taking care of myself. And that's kind of when the conversation started. I'm going to start making some better choices. I'm going to start doing this. I'm going to start doing that. And then in the process of doing that, I really started feeling awful. You start kind of peeling. You don't realize how bad you feel until you really start diving into it. And it wasn't like that, oh, woe is me, but it was a little bit like, man, like you're just kind of treading water here. And the moment that we start trying to like, find a little way to kind of free you up here, like, I mean, you're just going to sink to the bottom. And ultimately that's what happened. And so kind of fast forward, I won again in 2014. And that's a little bit of when all the changes started to take place, and started doing some lab work and started kind of piecemealing of like, why is this happening? Why is this happening? Maybe we just don't feel like 100% of what we could be.
And what was the trigger for starting to dig into that? Was it how you were feeling or any certain symptoms you're having?
It was everything. I could sleep at any moment of the day. I would literally, I felt like I could sleep 12 hours, wake up, be up for an hour and go right back to bed. And a lot of that is, habitual stuff. I had no nighttime routine. I didn't, if you ask me what a nighttime routine is, it's like I lay there and I close my eyes and I go to bed. And like never understood any kind of, dietary as far as, well, this can cause this, it causes this, and this. So I just started diving into it all. And, I think as like, especially golfers can tend to be like hyper analytical. And even though that is not my overall personality, but in my job, you kind of, when you start to dive into something, you're going to go in, kind of full tilt. And that's exactly what I did. It's like, well, I'm going to fix this. And I'm going to fix this. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to fix this. And, if you're going to train someone how to do CrossFit, like you're not going to start them on Murph. Like you're
right.
like,
Hopefully not.
yeah, I mean, because it's over. Like,
yeah.
Like if that's their first, they'll never do it again. And unfortunately, like I went, like, I didn't know how to do a squat. And next thing you know, I'm trying to do this. And like, why do I feel so bad? Because I had made so many changes so fast. Like literally I had no baseline or I had no ability to be resilient in any kind of like significant change. And so kind of the bottom fell out.
Can you talk about some of the changes that you made? Like when you said you made a bunch of changes really fast, what did you go from like before until what changes did you make at that point?
It was a little bit of like no soda, like trying to dive into it, like a little bit more better nutrition, started training during tournament weeks.
Okay.
But with no change to it, like any kind of practice, no recovery modalities, no, just like, I'm just going to hammer it.
Yep.
Which in theory sounds great, but if you have no baseline, it's over. And so kind of get me into 2015. And that's when I really started to reach out, and I started to feel like I had done some lab work that it came back a little bit like, yeah, this doesn't really make a lot of sense. Why, you're 29 years old. What's going on here? Why are we having some of these things take place? And I ended up having an opportunity to speak with some, people that are incredible in their field. Ended up with a guy at UCLA who's an endocrinologist, and he's like basically like House. I didn't realize that was a real thing. And he had done some work with some other tour guys and kind of helped out. And I just said, man, I want to know, like, give me a path as far as what I need to do. And he pulled me in his office after being out there for 2 days, and he tested me for everything under the sun. And they thought I had like an autoimmune, like Addison's kind of thing, as far as like the way that my like cortisol and my like hormone response to stress and everything was like inversely proportional. And just kind of like, all right, well, we're going to go see this guy and kind of figure it out. And he said, well, I'm going to tell you one thing, that you're not going to die. And I was like, what? Like, I mean, I didn't really come here for that part. Like, I just like, just give me a plan of what I'm doing. It's like, no, man, if you're in my office, like I tell people every single day, they have things that can't be cured.
Wow.
And that was the moment of like, I don't ever want to feel like this again, especially like my jaw hit the floor, guy cut my legs out from under me, and literally just sat there in a full blank stare for who knows how long. And he said, man, you've made a lot of changes in a really short amount of time. And you basically opened up Pandora's box of all well-intentioned, but you have no base to be able to withstand these things. So your body is just holding on to everything it possibly can, because it doesn't know what you're going to do to it next.
It's under a lot of stress.
So I came back to 100%. And then you have a adverse hormonal response to stress from, the way that your cortisol goes to kind of throughout the day. And, it's high when it should be low, and it's low when it should be high. And just kind of all the different things. I remember my like inflammatory marker, the way he pulled it, he said, if I did not physically take the blood out of your arm myself, I would have thought this was for a 75-year-old man.
Oh gosh, that's not good news when you're 29.
Yes, and I was 29. So it was all these things were kind of taking place at once, and all the time I'm still trying to play and compete on the tour somehow.
Gosh.
And all kind of going through this. And he kind of gave me an understanding of, all right, these are kind of some baseline tests you're going to have, and slowly be able to kind of pick little bits of information and kind of piecemeal a plan together as far as, all right, I'm going to take care of this first. I'm going to take care of this. I'm going to kind of just incrementally go down this list, and all like basically run of the mill stuff, but you're kind of taking all the information from the individual ones and putting together as far as the overall picture. So I came back to Tennessee. I went to an allergist first. They thought I had some stuff with just everything that had taken place. And we were in a guy's office. It's about 10 in the morning. And he turned a piece of paper around and had all these check marks on it. He said, "Do you see this?" I said, "Yeah, it's a bunch of tick marks." He said, "That's the number of times you've yawned since you've been in my office." He said, you need to go. And I went and saw his son, who is an ENT.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally left his office and went to the next. And the guy did a scan of my sinus cavity. Well, playing sports as a kid, I'd broke my nose 3 times and I never really had it set. And basically the entire left side of my sinus cavity was done. Like I couldn't breathe. I couldn't recover. So then it kind of transpired, and I did some sleep studies. I did back-to-back nights. I had 15 minutes of REM sleep combined.
Oh my goodness.
No, 0 deep.
Wow.
Ever.
No wonder you're so tired.
And just, it all started to kind of make sense. And, no wonder your hormonal response to stress is, out of whack, and how like your body kind of holds on to excess body fat and all these different things. Cause it's just literally just holding on for dear life because it doesn't know. So I had complete sinus reconstruction in kind of the summer, middle end of 2015. And honestly, that completely changed. It was brutal. Absolutely brutal.
That's a rough surgery. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, turbinate, deviated septum, they basically roto-rooted my sinus cavity and kind of reset it all in there.
Yeah.
And then they did soft palate in the back of my throat, just to kind of create a little bit of airflow. And we had done a little bit of baseline testing, and I'd started kind of getting into kind of running and understanding like what your VO2 was and kind of what it is. And by having the surgery and, starting to see the recovery within a very short amount of time, my VO2 went up 20 points.
Wow.
Well, just because I could
your body just
breathe.
Needed some oxygen. Yeah.
I just needed to breathe. And, which is funny. I told some people that we were training with some guys and we were on the West Coast. And, like, man, you can run pretty good. I was like, man, I had the Tommy John surgery of running. And said all these guys are going to find out that, you kind of blow it's not great for seasonal allergies, but in terms of like to get some oxygen in there, it's pretty great.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And so I think so often just that part, we think about sleep and nutrition and exercise and all these things, but just breathing, one of the most basic things that we all need. And there's so many different factors that can play into whether or not you're getting enough oxygen. So that's amazing to hear. And after that surgery, how did that affect your sleep and your energy and everything else?
I mean, it completely transformed it.
Yeah.
Like I remember the doctor kind of doing my like pre-op stuff, and he's like, it's going to take me about an hour and a half to kind of get all this stuff sorted. And I'm really going to just mess your life up for a couple of weeks. He said, but I promise at the end of this, he said, you're going to thank me. And if he called me today, he said I need to do it again, like I would 100, just knowing how I felt. And now that I'm capable of doing all these things now, like, I mean, it changed my life forever. And, amazing. Just made me, now to kind of see like what your body is truly capable of. And it just makes you, I remember sitting there kind of once it all started to come full circle to know like, man, I can do these things. This is what this was meant to do. And you only get one of these. Like, this is it. Like you can replace some parts here or there, but ultimately like, this is it. So you only get one shot. So you need to be a good steward of it. If you take care of this, it is amazing. Like, it'll take care of you. And I kind of misquote this a little bit, but people don't realize how bad they feel until they know how good they can feel.
Yeah.
And that was 100% like, I just started building and building and building and building. It's like, man, I feel great today. And I was like, I feel better than I did yesterday. And it's all slowly but surely coming together. So that was a cool process to kind of work through that. In the end of like kind of working through and playing the tour 2015, 2016, kind of 2017 started kind of building a pretty good routine, but still like I kind of carried on. I was probably heavier than I should have been. And I didn't really have the diet side sorted out. And it was December 2017. I'd reached out to Rich. I was like, man, I kind of don't really know what to do. My travel schedule kind of sucks for diet. And he's like, no, I started working with these RP guys. And I'm like, I had no idea what that is. He's like, well, I'm on a diet. I'm like, huh? Like, well, if you're on, I definitely need to be on one. And kind of going from there. And so he got me hooked up. I spent like 40 weeks. I sent a shirtless underwear and weight picture to a complete stranger that I have never met. And I went from 232 and 26% to 188 and about 10 and a half. And I played the whole year.
Wow.
And
wow. That's
probably
incredible.
probably the biggest I was at any point in my career. I was over 250 for a good portion of my career, but then I started making some changes, kind of see it. And then I started, the last part was kind of understanding the diet and the recovery aspect and kind of being able to put it all together and what that looked like in playing full time on the PGA Tour and traveling to the extent of what we do now.
Wow. And what, at what point did you start incorporating CrossFit workouts or CrossFit style workouts?
Honestly, a little bit throughout. Like the first workout I ever did at Rich's house, a guy pulled an assault bike. I met Josh Bridges in his kitchen in my underwear, and he literally sat and continued to eat a sandwich while this complete stranger showed up and just started changing in the middle of Rich's kitchen. And we got pulled an assault bike out, and he's like, all right, this is kind of what we think that you should do. Like the team was training, and they were doing stuff I didn't know what they were doing. But then we did like a progressive like wattage hold for 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, and every 5 minutes the wattage went up. And I had never really ridden an assault bike.
Yeah,
I knew what it was. And I got off and I was like, man, I basically just worked for 10 minutes and I am crushed. This is amazing. And then kind of the light bulb went off, because in the world of golf, like the practice, the training, the prep and everything, it's can be fairly monotonous from time to time. And there's not a lot of, with the evolution of TrackMan and understanding the ways of using analytics to kind of tweak your performance and how you prep has made huge strides, especially since I've been on tour. But for the most part it's time, it's practice, it's some discipline, and that's the way that you get better. And so the idea of like a CrossFit style training was, it's short, it's fast, and I can give you the same workout and you can do it 7 days in a row, 7 different ways, and the end result is completely different. And I was hooked as far as like, I'm going to take this mentality and this kind of understanding as far as how to train, and I'm going to figure out a way to incorporate this into golf. Because a lot of the different things, it doesn't really make sense as far as how to do that. But I was in, and I was going to figure it out.
Well, that's amazing. So how did this all start to evolve into your routine now when you're traveling, when you're playing? How do you incorporate all of these different factors?
A lot of it is just trial and error. And I would say now my biggest struggle is sort of experimentation, because now I know kind of a baseline. It's like, well, maybe if I do this a little bit more, and I kind of have some guardrails up there. And I have a doctor now who works with probably 10 or so players on tour. And he calls me the guinea pig, because a lot of things, like just because I know so many things, like you don't know until you try. So definitely have kind of learned to kind of pull back a little bit on the experimentation side and kind of find a plan to stick with it. But ultimately it's just adapting it into my lifestyle, understanding like fasting while traveling, understanding hydration when you're in the airplane for such a long period of time, like we are, like trying to build I don't have an 8-week strength cycle. Like we just don't have that. Like you can't do a periodization schedule for training. Like we just don't have I'm in a bulk phase, or I'm in a high cardio output phase. So our tournament weeks are like a microcosm of how you would plan a for a year. Just imagine, I guess is the best way to explain it. So our tournaments are Thursday through Sunday, but a lot of times you arrive Sunday or Monday, like throughout the week. So imagine this like sliding scale of this, X and Y axis of like heavier, longer, slower. And as the week progresses to shorter, faster, lighter. And we kind of do Wednesdays, the day before the event starts, we do like a fasted cardio, just a complete reset as far as just the energy systems and everything to kind of go into the tournament week. And kind of once the tournament starts, based off of tee times and stuff, you kind of build in a little bit of a different, still, the intensity is still slightly on the uptick, but the weights are moving faster, the reps are higher, and you kind of build it around, I want to move well, and I want to have respect to going out there when I have to tee off.
That's great. Do you have a coach or a trainer who helps you program the workouts around your tournament?
Yeah. One of the guys that Adam Curley, who travels with us on tour, he's a PT and literally a guy that has become one of my best friends in the world. But we met through, I had hurt my back my second year on tour, and I had this guy that wanted to do back surgery. I was 26.
Oh gosh.
And he's like, you're not doing back surgery at 26, man. So we did like 3 days at this, and I knew him, but not to the extent of how I know him now. And he's like, I think I can fix your back. And the day that I was supposed to have back surgery, I shot 64 in Mississippi. And 2 days later, I won a tournament that I was supposed to have back surgery that same day. And I was like, I'm not doing this. And we've been together ever since. And so he's been I remember my first workout with him was TRX, Y's, T's, and W's, 25 single skip jump rope that I did very poorly, and like a jog, walking. And that was kind of it. And now, to the extent of, we always say like the evolution of our friendship was like, we used to drink Dr. Pepper before the gym and after the gym. And we just hoped that he made it to the gym that day. And now the point of where he's almost like trying to get me to not go. He's like, you took a day off today? Great, man. That's awesome. Like, like your body needs to recover. I was like, man, we have come a lot of I was like, man, I just kind of like, I stretched out. I kind of moved around a little bit. He's like, you didn't work out? Like, no, I kind of took it easy today. It's like, that is awesome, man. Like, you would have never said that years ago.
Oh, that's great. What a transformation. Okay. So going through, I don't know if you could take us through, I'm sure you don't have a typical day, but on average, maybe taking us through kind of your routines around sleep, nutrition, exercise, recovery. What are the things that you're doing now that you've found through all this experimentation to be the right recipe for you?
And I think that's the key, is understanding that it's for you. Like, this is not for everyone. And like, I didn't have the base to be able to do what I do now, 3 or 4 years ago, or the understanding of really how to evaluate, is this working? Is it not working? And kind of understanding of how you feel and kind of using the things around you to kind of help make those decisions. But you have any particular order you would like me to go in?
Let's start with sleep first.
Okay. That's probably the one that I have made the biggest impact, understanding the biggest control of your environment, as cold and dark as you can get, kind of counterintuitive to kind of modern, most sleep guys say not to eat before. I try to eat a small meal, especially in tournaments and stuff, before I go to bed. And no caffeine afternoon, and understanding of when I play and what time zone that I'm going in. If you've never had Kristen Holmes on this podcast, the Whoop recovery lady, I mean, she's the one that's basically taught me everything. But understanding like how to travel from time zone to time zone and how to get acclimated to where you're going as fast as you possibly can, and then reacclimate back by operating in one time zone, but acting like you're in another one. It's like, I was like an alternate universe. She's like, kind of, but not really. But just kind of being aware of like, all right, this is the environment I'm going to, like, how quickly can I adapt to that just to where like I can kind of build back into my normal day-to-day routine. And I do supplement some as far as sleeping. I mean, nothing like a prescription or pharmaceutical or anything like that, like small dose CBD, a small amount of melatonin, just kind of from here to there, but nothing to the point of where it's like reliant, almost like the point if I know if I'm going to be able to give it the full value and the time and effort to go, and consistency in like time to bed and time awake. I think the best, I guess, understanding of sleep that I've ever given is like sleep is like time. You can't store it up and put it in your pocket and pull it out when you need it. Like you have to be a good steward of it, and you have to respect it and understanding like it is one of the most valuable tools that we have access to, and figuring out the different things you can do to kind of help have control of that as the best you possibly can. Figuring out the nighttime meal was something that was a bit of because it in your mind, like everything you were taught, it's the total opposite. Like fairly high fat, moderate carb, and some protein. You're like, man, I'm about to eat this fat like before I go to bed. Like it's just going to sit on me. But next thing you know, you're like, man, you need that slow digestion. You need something that's going to break down over time, and kind of understanding like just know how macronutrients work and like how your body kind of responds to these different things. I had a guy stay with me, and he's like, I cannot believe you're eating that like high fat stuff before you go to bed. I was like, man, I'm about to go sleep like a baby. Like next thing you know, like he's seeing one of my Whoop scores, or one of like an Aura ring or anything like that. He's like, next thing you know, it's like the night before, he's just killing this thing. It's like, I feel great.
Well, it just goes to show the importance of that experimentation, right? Because what works for you might not necessarily work for him, but trying it out and tracking your data and then figuring out what it is that works.
Do you have a Euler or a chili pad or anything like that?
I don't know. I would love to have one. I think those can be extremely helpful. I just try to keep my room really cold at night.
Yes. In the summer times, I travel with the single, like just the one person one, just because you can only get the room like so cold, and we've been playing outside, and it's physiologically impossible to lower your core body temperature by 2 degrees. So you have to use outside influences. And like, if I've been playing all day, it's 100 degrees. Like I need all the help I can get.
Yeah.
So I travel with that on the road, and, I'll cold shower. I'll do everything I possibly can, just so when I get in there, you signal your body to know like, hey, it's about go time here. We're about to do this.
That's awesome. And then what does your nutrition look like, and how do you keep that on track, especially while traveling?
The RP was great. The templates that they built out to understand like what a plate looked like, understanding like fat, carb, protein, veggie, and kind of how that is a little bit of a swing, and those proportions are, need to be respected throughout, like, whether it's a training volume or a high. I've got 4 pretty long stints where I'm on the road for probably 30 plus days at a time. So knowing that, and knowing the training volume and the practice and the travel, and kind of how like, all right, man, we can slightly increase this and maybe pull this back down. And then kind of you just have your overall baseline, that's what's going to be a part of every one of your meals, and just kind of how to balance that proportionally. And, the supplementation side, I know I turned 36 yesterday. So
happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank God. Understanding like, some deficiencies and different things throughout, just like for some reason, every single golfer on the PGA Tour is deficient in vitamin D, like, which is not, it doesn't really make sense.
Right. But of all people, you'd think you guys would have the best shot at any person. Yeah.
Of all my friends, and we all use the same, like we all sit with all our labs, and we're like, how is this possible? Like we are outside more than any people we know. So just understanding like supplementation and kind of building a routine as far as and those are kind of what like the baseline, like lab values kind of give you access to. And, I understand like the platform that you've created is understanding that like information goes a long way. And I was the complete opposite of that. I didn't want to know anything. I wanted to claim ignorance. I wanted to, ultimately it was no one's fault but my own as far as putting me in that situation. And I was trying to blame everyone else and everything else for why I felt the way that I did. And so I would probably do quarterly labs and kind of understanding that throughout seasons and different things. Like I'd always struggled in the month of March in my career, like trying to figure it out, like seeing these like astronomically high scores of just like what's going on here. And come to find out that like has some really, really bad seasonal allergies. And that's the time of year in the world of golf that we play that all the grass is overseeded. And like I had an allergy to it of the overseed that we play on. It's like, no wonder I suck. Like, and just kind of building a treatment plan as far as, all right, I know how I'm going to do this. This is how I'm going to combat it. This is the things that I'm going to use to kind of build. But if you don't take the time to understand that, you're just going to, continue to struggle and have no clue as far as why, when you can make little tweaks here and there to kind of make a huge difference. And, so kind of, I would put like diet, nutrition, kind of in the same spot, but also overall, just a health picture where you understand that throughout things are going to change. And, you're going to have to continually kind of go back to, not necessarily go back to the drawing board, but you're going to have a way to evaluate as far as if these things are truly what you're doing is working and what you can continually do to kind of push those things in the right direction.
So true. So true. Is there anything else that you found to be really helpful that's moved the needle for you in terms of recovery or anything else?
Like hot and cold, like, I mean, the perfect scenario when we were I was getting ready to take a red eye last year from San Diego, and I had played on Sunday, and Josh Bridges' house is pretty close to the airport. And I said, man, I'm gonna come over, and we worked out, and he's got a barrel sauna and he's got a freezer tub. And we did this contrast, and his barrel sauna gets hot.
Yeah.
And I've never been a good red eye flyer, ever, but I started, that was my first time really doing that length of contrast. It was like 20 minutes, 1 minute. And we did it for like hour and a half. We didn't have anything to do. So, I mean, you have to have the time, but not necessarily saying you have to do it for that length of time, but any opportunity kind of like shock, kind of your nervous system and kind of get in a spot where it's kind of ready for anything. Man, I took that red eye and got back to Tennessee, and my wife's like, what did you do? Like, I didn't look bad. She picked me up. We went to breakfast. Like I was ready to go. And that was kind of the first kind of interesting, like, all right, I need to kind of try to learn to shock my system as best I possibly can and get myself into a spot. But any kind of contrast and just putting yourself in uncomfortable situations and just dealing with it. Like, this is my gym that we're in now. And there's an ice machine, there's a horse trough in the back, and just literally people, and they see the ice. It's just like, no, like, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm gonna work out and I'm gonna leave. And then they get to the point of like, kind of start to see how they feel. The next thing you know, like, do I need to get the ice ready? Like, are we about to do this? So a lot of it's fear, and probably whether it's realistic or unrealistic, but, a contrast for sure. And, the making sure so many people undereat, especially that have high output as far as whatever, if they're in a sport, if they're in just the fear of food is, I don't know what's created that. I mean, I had the opposite of that where just in abundance, but understanding how to use food as fuel and, kind of throughout your day. And you cannot continually, kind of deprive that. It's just going to hold on forever. Balancing like kind of intermittent fasting throughout travel days. Like I don't eat when I travel, like the moment. And then I basically try to reset my like eating calendar or eating schedule to the time that I'm going into. And as soon as I land, I work out no matter what time of day. And it's not like I'm going to go do the, toughest workout you've ever seen, but I'm going to move as soon as I get there. And then I'll find food and then kind of go about my day. Like I'm not going to put myself in that situation where I continually put myself at a detriment just because I've scheduled bad. So when I fly as a consideration, and it's not always the cheapest, it's not always like the most convenient time wise, but it's going to work as far as my schedule, as far as to building in to understand. I'm going to put myself in a spot to go compete and where I can build into the week, and I'm not just going to constantly digging myself out of a hole.
That's great. That's great. So you made obviously with all of the work that you've done, you've made a huge transformation just in your health. What was the response from like your family, your friends, other players, just seeing you go through this whole process?
Some of them, I've gotten every kind of comment you can think of, good, bad, positive. Well, you've made these changes, you haven't won. And honestly, like when I made the changes, golf was not even a consideration. Like I do this for me. I do this for my family. Like if my career continued, incredible. Like that's a huge blessing. Kind of feel like you almost got a second chance. But at the end of the day, like I said earlier, this is it. Like I got to take care of this before I can worry about any of that other stuff. So to go out there and kind of, be able to kind of tell my story and sit down in front of like, don't make the same mistakes I did. Don't take your health for granted. Don't take your body for granted, and be a good steward of what you are truly capable of. If you kind of build in some habits that can kind of push yourself in the right direction. And I have seen a myriad of different things. And I think it's more just being authentic and kind of, do what you say and have people, kind of see your day-to-day life, not necessarily like you're sitting there preaching, because I have no place to judge. Like I know all the things that people struggle with because I did it, and I'm not gonna sit there, well, I did it, so you should do it. Like people have to make the decision, and you're the only one that can make yourself do it. Like no one can do it for you. And ultimately I kind of thought someone was going to do it for me. And sadly, that's not the case. And I was very misinformed, but like my dad, we saw him last night for my birthday, and he's a big guy, and we had started doing some health stuff with him and started kind of figuring out, and a little bit of it just not knowing. And in the process is probably the last 18 months has lost about 70 pounds.
Wow.
And he's 62 years old.
That's amazing.
So, but just seeing different things like that.
Well, the impact that you can have just by him seeing you do it, the people around you seeing what you do and realizing that can have a huge impact just in inspiring others and them seeing what's possible and how great you feel. And then they want to do the same.
Yeah. My caddy is probably the person that, I spend more time with him than anybody throughout this whole, like within the past year, he's probably lost 40, 45 pounds.
That's
and he
amazing.
Makes a joke. He's like, I had to do something or I was going to get kicked off the team. I said, I don't operate like that, but just to see him like, never in my life did I think that we would be working together. And this happened last week. We were done practicing, and he's like, are you about to go to the gym? He's like, I'm gonna join you today. But just like the fact of like it's become such a habit now. As far as it's not a matter of if and when, it's just a matter of what time of day. Like, is it 4 a.m.? Is it 10 p.m.? Like what am I going to figure out a way to move and kind of have this thing work the way that it's truly capable of, and kind of go from there. So I think those kind of things are super rewarding in regards of I wasn't sitting there telling my caddy he needed to lose weight or tell my dad or this and that, but they kind of saw some of the things that I did, and maybe that was kind of a spark or whatever, and kind of see. But I was very thankful for the people that came around me and kind of pushed me in the right direction. And I did not do this on my own. I had a lot of really smart people and a lot of people that I got to ask some questions to that are some of the best in the world at what they do. Mm-hmm. So if I have a chance to do things like this and talk to people like yourself and push it out there, that, a little bit of information goes a long way. And man, truly shocking to figure out what you're capable of once you put yourself in that spot.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I love how you said, you really did this for yourself and for your family and not necessarily for golf first, and how like when we all focus on doing things for the right reasons and not necessarily for, other people or for other whatever the external appearance is, but doing it for the right reasons, then other people around us see that and it has a positive impact on so many other people. There's ripples that you probably don't even realize of people that have just seen your story and have been inspired, and that's inspired them to make a change. And so I think a lot of times when we think about making lifestyle changes, if we do it for external reasons, it's not going to be something that's lasting. But if you do it for yourself, for your family, for things that are really important to you, obviously this is something you're going to stick with for the rest of your life because you've seen the transformation.
Mm-hmm. We do stuff with like corporate partners and everything. And I basically tell them like, man, if we're going to do anything, like this is an authentic user kind of conversation. This is not, oh, they just paid that guy to do that. Mm-hmm. Like I'm going to do and kind of be all the things that we spoke about, but like, we're going to spend some time together and start to see kind of how this mm-hmm. works. This is not just, hey, throw this out there on some social media and mm-hmm. figure it out. And then, we'll never talk to you, but it's kind of the inner workings of how it's going. Mm-hmm. I had 2 weeks ago, we played the Players, and I had a guy that had reached out to me on Instagram, and I had responded like very sort of vague and, mm-hmm. Not necessarily like trying to brush him off, but more just, and then he sent me this like super long thing about his health. And I was like, holy cow, man, this guy is in a mess. And I just kind of told him some stuff that I thought, I am not a health expert by any means, but I just kind of told him some things that I learned from my own thing, and found out that basically his gallbladder was shot. And like he ended up coming to watch me play 3 days after having his he's like literally pulling his shirt up in the middle. He's like, he's like, this is the best I felt ever. Like he just got married, like saw these different things mm-hmm. and started to see kind of what you said, the ripple effects, a complete stranger that I've never met. Mm-hmm. And he comes out like just to be able to kind of tell the story and kind of take the time and effort to kind of be intentional when given the opportunity, and being appreciative of opportunity at the same time.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And also I love that you're so open about all the sort of trial and error and all the experimentation, and realizing that this isn't necessarily like a straight path. Like you said, you didn't want,
no, I feel like it's like
a lot of ups and downs and yeah. And I think one of the other things that was really interesting that I read about was at one point you ended up taking a supplement that you later realized was on the ban list, and you went ahead and reported that yourself. Mm-hmm. And that was something that was a learning experience, and that gave you also a little bit of time away from golf that allowed you to focus on your health too. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it was a unique experience, and that was kind of, and this is not a knock on like physicians in general, but when you're dealing with overall general public health, you kind of, you treat the symptoms, and you treat, kind of a little bit more of like, mm-hmm. instead of kind of looking at the causation as far as what was taking place. And I had a doctor that was just a general, well-meaning everything. Mm-hmm. And I had some numbers that were off, and she had said, hey, you have some things that are wrong. I don't really know what's causing them, but we're going to figure it out. But in the interim, there are a few things that I feel like you could take that would kind of help it's not going to fix it, but it could kind of help alleviate some symptoms. And I was like, sure. I went and got at the grocery store, which knowing what we know now,
man, like, be careful.
Who knows what I had, but at the end of the day, it was my fault. I didn't do the due diligence on my side to understand, kind of what was asked of us. I didn't have a clue about I didn't know about WADA. I was a PGA Tour player. I just like, man, I drink a lot of Dr. Pepper and, I kind of eat whatever I want. And like, never thought the first thing about taking a multivitamin or anything like that. So it's that process, I know now. But that was the kind of the transition period of year when golf was going in the Olympics. So we were coming under a higher testing protocol, and they started asking some questions, and I'd kind of started looking into this as far as what I was taking. And throughout the whole process, I never failed a drug test. I never had any issues of where it came up, but I mean, kind of the integrity of the sport of what I play, I never did anything to gain an advantage. And ultimately, it was just pure negligence on my part from not doing the digging to figure it out. And I was suspended for 3 months, self-reported use of a banned substance irrelevant of a positive test. And man, it was an eye-opening experience, and kind of the first thing, the only response and responsibility came to myself. And, I needed to be the person to kind of take ownership of all these different things and kind of figure it out. And, kind of get me to where I am today. And it was honestly, I don't know if that would have taken place if I would have gotten to this spot. But I mean, not necessarily it was like a wake up call. It was just it was a bump in the road, but a cool story to be able to tell on the backside, because ultimately, if I would have not said anything, no one would have ever known. I could have still been taking it to that. My numbers were so low, in order to it would have never shown up on anything. Yeah. So, but the fact of we call penalties on ourselves when we play, at the highest level on the PGA Tour. And I would hope that other guys in my situation would do the same thing.
Right. It's the integrity of it, I think, that you mentioned. It's so important, and just shows, the integrity of the sport, but the integrity of you as a person too.
It was definitely a unique experience for sure.
I can imagine. And doing, I think just in general, when just trying to do the right thing, it always comes back, even if you go through something difficult in the moment, it always comes back around to be a positive. Okay. Well, there's 3 questions I normally wrap up the podcast with. The first one is, what are the 3 things that you do now on a regular basis that have the biggest positive impact on your health?
Man,
it's hard to narrow down.
I would say it's definitely, I was going through my routine. It's well, that's important. And I do this every day, and I do this every day. I don't know if it's basically a realistic view of my everyday life, and being cognizant of truly the opportunity that I have. And it's not always the easiest thing to do, but I think it is refreshing. I try to be as consistent as I possibly can in my sleep, and I literally try to move every single day, and try to find the happy balance of all these different things as far as what I deal with on a day-to-day basis. And it can be at the end, it can be at the beginning, it could be in the middle, and just finding the fact of how much better I feel, once it's all over.
That's great. Is there
3 things? Is
I'm sure there are many more, and we've talked about a lot of them. What is one thing that you think would have a big impact on your health, but you have a hard time implementing it, or something you're working on?
The contrast, the hot and cold, and a little bit of it is just I need to figure out the best way to do it in the perfect scenario. But the traveling and that's something that I could definitely be more like I just need to search it out more because I know how much better I feel. And I respond well on the extremes on both sides, and neither one of them necessarily bother me more than the other. So if you can kind of tolerate it and learn how to get in there, it is great. But that's something that, like, and you should, but just trying to figure out the best way to kind of implement it as something in there. And I need to stretch way more. Like my mobility is decent, but I could spend a lot more time than I do. And I even make a conscious effort, but I can always do more.
Yeah, the hot and cold is just one of those things that's logistically challenging, especially when you're traveling. It's great when you have a good setup at home and you can do it consistently, but in order to do all of these things, they just require a lot of planning and forethought. So it's a lot to juggle.
Correct.
All right. Last question is, what does a healthy life look like to you?
A healthy life is someone that has a good perspective on all things and understanding that the cause and effect of the decisions that they make and what that looks like on a day-to-day basis, from how they eat, how they train, how they sleep, how they interact with others. And, it's not fear-based, but it's more, you get in what you put out, or you get, I'm trying to think of the best way to say that.
Yeah.
You get out of it what you put into it. And I flipped that. Sorry.
We got it.
But an understanding of, I feel like throughout a lot of people that I come in contact with, it's like, oh, you can't do this or you can't do this. Like, well, no, I can do this because I've done all this other stuff. The work has been done and the work is continually being done. Like, it's okay to enjoy life. And like moderation is throughout everything. And I feel like, our lives are meant to be enjoyed, but understanding, but also respected at the same time.
I love that. That's wonderful. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And thank you for being such a positive example. I think for so many people that, you can feel so much better than you think. And when you're struggling with something, seek out those answers, seek out people around you who can help you. And then at the end of the day, like you said, it kind of falls on you. But you've taken it and run with it and gone through all the experimentation and figured out a plan that works for you, and not used your travel or anything else as an excuse. You've just tried to find a way to make it all work. And it's amazing to see you feeling so well and doing so well and doing it for the right reasons, and having the integrity that you do, and all the ways that then trickles down to the other people in your life and people that look up to you. So thank you for being such a great example and for sharing your story with us.
Well, thank you for having me, and best of luck in Kentucky.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in. If you enjoy listening to the podcast, please consider subscribing and giving it a 5-star rating on iTunes. It really does help to get the word out to more people.